Amira's story reminds us that sometimes, the most powerful impact doesn't come from following a system, it comes from connecting with something genuine inside you. And in her case, that connection was to music that existed long before her, but found new life through her voice. Long before viral videos, talent shows, and global audiences at the tap of a screen, there was a man shaping emotion through music in a completely different way. His name was Giacomo Puccini. Born in 1858 in Italy, Puccini grew up surrounded by music. His family had a long history of church musicians, and from an early age, it was clear that music wouldn't just be part of his life, it would define it. But Puccini didn't just want to create music. He wanted to create feeling. And that's exactly what he became known for. His operas weren't just compositions, they were emotional experiences. Stories filled with love, tragedy, longing, and human vulnerability. He had a unique ability to take complex emotions and express them in ways that felt immediate and relatable. One of his most famous works is the opera Gianni Schicchi, and within it lies the aria O mio babbino caro. At first glance, it may seem like a simple, beautiful piece. But when you understand its context, it becomes something much deeper. The aria is sung by a young woman named Loretta, who is pleading with her father. She is in love, and she desperately wants his approval to marry the man she cares about. Her words are soft, emotional, and filled with urgency. She sings not with power, but with vulnerability. That's the brilliance of Puccini. He didn't just write notes. He wrote human emotion into music. And O mio babbino caro became one of the most recognizable arias in opera history because of that simplicity and depth. It doesn't rely on complexity to impress, it relies on connection. Over the years, countless professional opera singers have performed it, each bringing their own interpretation, their own emotion, their own voice. But the core of the piece has never changed. It's still about love. Still about longing. Still about that fragile moment of asking to be understood. And that's why, even over a century later, it continues to resonate. When someone like Amira sings it, she's not just performing a song, she's stepping into a story that has been told for generations. A story that began in Italy, traveled across time, and found new meaning in a completely different world. That's the power of true artistry. It doesn't stay in one place. It evolves. It lives on. And in moments like these, where past and present meet through a single voice, you begin to understand something deeper. Fame may bring attention. But legacy? Legacy is what connects it all. The connection between a young voice and a century-old composition doesn't happen by accident. It happens because something in the music is timeless, something that refuses to fade, no matter how much the world changes around it. And when you begin to truly understand O mio babbino caro, you start to realize that its power isn't just in how it sounds, it's in what it represents. Because this aria is not about showing off vocal ability. It's not about hitting the highest note or holding the longest phrase. It's about emotional honesty. And that's where the real challenge begins. For Amira Willighagen, stepping into a piece like this meant stepping into a role that carries emotional weight far beyond her years. The character she portrays is not a child. It's a young woman deeply in love, caught in a moment of vulnerability, pleading with her father for understanding. So how does a child connect with that? That's the question many people quietly asked after her performance. And the answer isn't as complicated as some might think. Emotion in music doesn't always come from lived experience, it often comes from empathy. From imagination. From the ability to feel something deeply, even if you haven't personally lived through it. And Amira demonstrated that ability in a way that surprised even seasoned musicians. When she sang, it didn't feel like imitation. It didn't feel like she was copying what she had heard from professionals. It felt like she had internalized the emotion and found her own way of expressing it. That's rare. Because in classical music, especially opera, there's a long tradition of interpretation. Singers study the greats, learn the standard phrasing, and build their performances on those foundations. But the ones who truly stand out are those who bring something personal into it, something that can't be taught. Amira's tone was clear, her control was steady, but more importantly, her delivery was sincere. There was no sense of overcompensation, no attempt to prove anything. And that's exactly what made people stop and listen. At the same time, it's important to understand that a moment like that doesn't define an entire career. It opens a door, but what happens after that is what truly matters. After her breakthrough, Amira faced a new kind of challenge. Not just performing, but growing. Because voices change. Especially young voices. The technique that works at 9 years old doesn't always carry into teenage years or adulthood. There are physical changes, vocal developments, and new expectations. And this is where many child prodigies struggle. Some lose their voice. Some lose their passion. Some get overwhelmed by pressure. But Amira's journey took a different path. She continued to train, to perform, and to evolve carefully. Without rushing into a completely different style. Without abandoning the foundation that brought her recognition. And that balance is difficult. Because once the world sees you in a certain way, there's always pressure to either stay exactly the same or change completely. But growth doesn't work like that. It's gradual. It's subtle. It requires patience. And in her case, that patience became part of her strength. Her performances after the initial spotlight still carried that same essence, calm, focused, and emotionally grounded. But you could also begin to hear the changes. Slight differences in tone. More control. A deeper understanding of phrasing. It wasn't about becoming louder or more dramatic. It was about becoming more refined. To fully appreciate this evolution, you have to go back again to the foundation laid by Giacomo Puccini. Because Puccini didn't just write music for a moment, he wrote music that grows with the performer. Oh mio babino caro is deceptively simple. On paper, it doesn't look like the most technically demanding aria. It's not filled with extreme vocal runs or dramatic shifts. But that simplicity is exactly what makes it so challenging. There's nowhere to hide. Every note is exposed. Every breath is noticeable. Every slight change in tone can alter the entire emotional impact. And that's why this aria has been performed by some of the greatest voices in history. Not because it's easy, but because it demands a level of control and emotional precision that few pieces require in such a concentrated form. Puccini understood the human voice in a way that went beyond technical composition. He understood how small musical choices could create powerful emotional responses. The gentle rise of the melody. The softness of the opening lines. The way the phrase builds without becoming overwhelming. All of these elements work together to create a moment that feels intimate. Almost like a private conversation set to music. And that intimacy is what connects performers across generations. When Amira sings it, she's not just recreating Puccini's work, she's interacting with it. Responding to it. Bringing her own interpretation into something that has already been shaped by history. And that's where things become interesting. Because every performer who sings this aria is, in a way, adding a new layer to its legacy. Some focus on vocal power. Some emphasize emotional vulnerability. Some bring dramatic intensity. But the core remains the same. And that core is what allows a piece written in the early 20th century to still feel relevant today. As Amira's journey continued, her role in that legacy became clearer. She wasn't just another singer performing a well-known aria. She was part of a new generation rediscovering classical music in a modern context. And that matters more than people realize. Because classical music, for many, feels distant. Old. Untouchable. Something reserved for concert halls and formal settings. But moments like her audition changed that perception. Suddenly, opera wasn't just something you had to study, it was something you could feel instantly. Something that could appear unexpectedly on a talent show and still carry the same emotional weight as it would in a grand theater. And that shift opened doors. It encouraged younger audiences to explore music they might have ignored. It reminded older audiences of why these pieces became classics in the first place. And it created a bridge between two worlds that often feel disconnected. But while Amira's story continues to evolve, the story of Giacomo Puccini reached its conclusion many years ago. He passed away in 1924, leaving behind a body of work that would go on to define opera for generations. But even in his absence, his influence didn't fade. If anything, it grew stronger. His compositions became staples in opera houses around the world. His melodies became instantly recognizable. And his ability to capture human emotion through music became a standard that many composers aspire to reach. What makes Puccini's work endure is not just technical brilliance, it's relatability. Even though his operas are set in different times and places, the emotions within them are universal. Love, loss, hope, desperation, these are things that don't change, no matter the era. And that's why a piece like O mio babbino caro can still connect with someone hearing it for the first time today. Because at its core, it's not about a specific character in a specific story. It's about a feeling. A moment of vulnerability. A desire to be understood. A plea that feels deeply human. And when you bring that understanding back to Amira's performance, something becomes clear. The reason people connected with her wasn't just because she was young. It wasn't just because her voice was impressive. It was because, in that moment, she captured the essence of the piece. She didn't overpower it. She didn't complicate it. She respected it. And in doing so, she allowed the music to speak for itself. As time moves forward, both stories continue, but in very different ways. Puccini's story remains fixed in history, preserved through recordings, performances, and the continued study of his work. His voice, in a way, still exists, but through others. Through every singer who chooses to bring his compositions to life again. Amira's story, on the other hand, is still being written. Every performance adds a new chapter. Every stage she steps on becomes part of her evolution. Every note she sings contributes to a journey that is far from complete. And that contrast, the finished legacy and the ongoing journey, is what makes this connection so powerful. One represents origin. The other represents continuation. And somewhere in between those 2 points, music lives.
When people think of Amira Willighagen, most immediately remember one moment, a 9-year-old girl standing confidently on the stage of Holland's Got Talent in 2013, singing Puccini with astonishing control. That performance traveled across the world within days. Millions watched. Millions reacted. It became one of the most talked about talent show auditions of its time. But viral moments create a complicated legacy. The world loves prodigies. The shock factor of youth combined with elite skill generates instant fascination. Yet history shows that being labeled a child prodigy can become both a gift and a limitation. The applause is loud in the beginning, but expectations grow even louder. The real question is no longer whether she was extraordinary at 9. That is already documented. The real question is what her name will represent 20 or 30 years from now. There are 2 possible narratives. The first narrative is simple: she will always be remembered as the little girl who stunned judges and won a talent show. A viral sensation frozen in time. A symbol of early brilliance. The second narrative is more demanding: she evolves into a fully matured soprano whose adult artistry overshadows her childhood fame. The difference between those narratives depends entirely on long-term development. Opera is not an industry built on quick fame cycles. It is built on technical mastery, linguistic precision, breath control, stamina, and interpretive depth. Great sopranos are defined not by one aria, but by decades of disciplined performance across demanding repertoires. Her early fame gave her something rare: global name recognition before adulthood. That recognition opens doors that many conservatoire-trained singers spend years trying to unlock. However, recognition alone does not guarantee artistic greatness. It only provides opportunity. The transition from child voice to adult instrument is the defining challenge. As her body matured, her vocal structure naturally changed. The crystalline lightness that stunned audiences evolved into a warmer, fuller tone. That transformation is not a loss, it is biological progression. But audiences often struggle with change. They compare the present voice to the memory of the child. For her legacy to evolve beyond nostalgia, her adult performances must stand independently, not as reminders of who she was, but as statements of who she has become. Another factor shaping her legacy is discipline. Throughout her career, there have been no major scandals, no chaotic public breakdowns, and no dramatic rebranding attempts. Stability may not generate headlines, but it protects longevity. Longevity determines legacy. Financially, her early years likely created a strong base through concert income, recordings, digital monetization, and licensing. However, wealth alone does not define artistic history. Many wealthy entertainers are forgotten. Artistic credibility, on the other hand, survives decades. Her involvement in the Gelukskinders Foundation adds another dimension to her legacy. Philanthropy extends influence beyond music. If her artistic career continues steadily while her charitable impact expands, her name may represent more than performance alone. Legacy is layered. There is also the strategic question of direction. If she pursues major opera houses and aligns with elite European institutions, she positions herself within the traditional pathway of great sopranos. That road is competitive and demanding but carries immense prestige. If she remains primarily in independent concerts and crossover events, her reach may be broader but less institutionally anchored. That choice would shape how future critics and historians categorize her career. What makes her story compelling is that it is still unfinished. Most viral sensations burn brightly and fade quickly. In her case, the flame did not extinguish. It stabilized. It matured. It became less explosive but more controlled. Great sopranos are remembered for their repertoire, their technical endurance, and their interpretive authority. If her adult career achieves those benchmarks, her childhood fame will simply be the opening chapter of a much larger narrative. If not, she will remain an unforgettable prodigy whose early brilliance defined her public memory. At this stage, the outcome remains open. The miracle moment in 2013 secured her place in internet history. What she builds over the next decades will determine whether she secures her place in operatic history. And that distinction, between viral memory and artistic immortality, is the true measure of her legacy. And also, if you know you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and comment for more videos, and please share the video. Thanks for watching. See you in another next video. Peace out.